guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about one really important topic I've gotten so many questions about, and it is cake price. And today we're going to be tackling buttercream. Yay! So if you haven't seen my other videos where I tackled fondant and whipped cream cakes and their pricing, make sure to check the link in the description box below. There are several links there, so I'm going to put the links there so you can check them out in case you're having problem with pricing your cakes. Okay, so let's get started. This video will be divided into 3 parts because I want to go in depth about pricing. But the first part I want to talk to you guys about is not the part of the cake. It is the accessories you put on the cake. For example, if you're like me, I like cake with flowers and I like to stock them up. I like to invest in like different flowers, different types, the dried ones, the fresh ones, the artificial ones, those things that are raining one time. There's this spare thing like the palm leaves, those dried ones. Like I like to really invest in the accessories of my cakes, like ribbons, like cake toppers and all of those. So when you're pricing cake, these prices I'm going to be giving you today, when you want to price a buttercream cake, the first thing you should do is strip it down of the other accessories that you're going to have to add on it before you start to price. Okay, so today we're going to be making this cake. There's this pretty cake, like the top forward cake. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, so while I make that so you guys can watch, I'm going to be explaining the different parts of costing this particular cake to you. Not just this cake, you can use this formula for any buttercream cake. This is just an example, so you can have an example, kind of understand what I'm trying to communicate to you. Okay, so this video will be divided into 3 parts, which is the ingredients, number 1, and the ingredients are divided into 2 parts: the frosting ingredient and the cake ingredient. And then the second part is the overhead, the cost of overhead, and then the third part is the cost of labor. So like I said initially, when you see a cake you want to make for someone, before you can cost it properly and cost it for you to not make a loss or cheat the customer, you need to first of all strip it naked. So remove the flowers, remove the topper, remove any excess, whatever. How much will it cost you to make this particular cake? That's what we're talking about today. Okay, so the first thing you want to do as a cake maker is to break down the cost of ingredients. Let me give you an example when I say break down. If you go to the store and you buy 1 kg of flour for $1, when you want to calculate your price for, let's say a customer wants this particular cake. This cake I'm making right now is 10 inches. This top forward cake is 10 inches. So let's say this customer wants this cake. And if you want to calculate how much is the cost of flour, just flour for this cake, you can't calculate with 1 kg is equals to $1, because you're not going to be using 1 kg of flour for this cake. What you should do for every ingredient first is to divide it. I like to divide my ingredient into 3 parts. Into those that can be measured per grams, those that can be measured in milliliters, and those that can be measured in units. Okay, so let me break this down for you guys. Yeah, the first ones should be measured in grams. For example, sugar, flour, baking powder, butter. Yes, baking powder. If you're buying a jar of 500 grams jar of baking powder for $1, then try to divide the 500 grams into 8 grams. 8 grams is just 1 tablespoon. So that way you understand how much a tablespoon will be. You should calculate every tiny little part of your ingredient cost. That way you won't be cheating yourself and you won't be cheating your customers. Okay, so once you're done with grams, you should also calculate in milliliters. For example, milk, buttermilk, if you'll be using vinegar, if you'll be using fruit juice, the things that come in liquid should be measured in milliliters, and you should calculate your price based on that. And then number 3 are the things that you should measure in units. For example, if you're going to be using 4 eggs, that way you're using 4 eggs. You can calculate. I don't like to calculate eggs in grams, at least for me. So if you're going to be, maybe if you're making a banana bread, then you have 1 banana, 1 unit of banana, 2 units. How much will it cost? How much will 1 unit of egg cost you? You know those things. Once you have the price of your ingredients down, then you should think about the price of your frosting. Are you using Swiss meringue buttercream? Are you using American buttercream? Are you using Armine buttercream? Those buttercreams cost different because your ingredients are different, and they take different amounts of time to make. So when you're, depending on the kind of buttercream you're going to be using on the cake, you should consider that when you're pricing your cake. If you're going to be using Swiss meringue, of course, you know now you need egg whites. Do you understand? And usually, let me give you guys a tip. If I'm calculating eggs for Swiss meringue, I don't just calculate the egg whites. I'm also making the client pay for the egg yolks, because, you know, what am I going to do with the yolks, you know? Anyways, so number 2, after calculating the cost of ingredients, is the cost of overhead. And when I say overhead, I mean the cost of electricity, the cost of water, the cost of rent. Yes, I know most of you are baking in your kitchen, and yes, you have to calculate the cost of rent. Not the cost of rent for the entire house, but you can decide, okay, if I were giving this kitchen out to rent to a baker, how much should I give it out for a month? Yes, something like that. That way you'll be able to calculate how much you want a client to pay for a cake that was made in your kitchen, for the cost of rent for that kitchen. And equipment. Most times people forget about equipment, which is important. Cake equipment are not cheap. For example, mixers, blenders, airbrushes, weighing scales, you know, the oven itself, like the different equipment you use. I try to ignore like the price of tiny things like maybe a spatula, you know, a rolling pin. I kind of like leave those prices out. But when it comes to the price of maybe the oven itself, my mixer, let me tell you how I charge for that. For example, this is what I do. Let's say I have, of course, you're not going to make one client pay for, or make 10 clients pay for your entire mixer. No, you're not going to do that. Let's say I have a mixer that's $500. I can decide, okay, I don't know how many cakes I'll make with this mixer, but let's say, for example, I make 100 cakes. Or I make 200 cakes, or I make 300 cakes. So you can decide, okay, for every time I mix a cake for a customer, I'm going to charge them $2 or $1 for my mixer. And then you're going to have that price, a price you have set for every single piece of important equipment you have. For example, I can decide for every time I'm going to make a buttercream cake now. And then I'm going to mix the cake. Let's say it's a vanilla cake. So I'm going to mix the cake, and I'm going to charge the person $1 for using my mixer. And then I'm also going to mix the buttercream, of course. So I'm going to charge the person maybe another $1 for using my mixer for the buttercream. Let's say, for example, I was making a banana bread for a customer. I only charge them once for using the mixer. And if I didn't use the mixer at all, I used my hand, then it would just be the cost of labor. I wouldn't charge them for the equipment. So that's how I decide. So sometimes I just decide, okay, for my airbrush, I'm going to be charging $0.2. So if a cake, I'm going to use airbrush to make the design, I'm going to add $0.2. So that's how you charge for equipment. Okay, so the last and final thing is labor. This is very important. I've had my cake business for almost 9 years, and for the first 7 years or more of the business, I wasn't paying myself. Probably because it kind of worked for me for a long time, because, you know, I was a student and my parents sent me money, you know, for upkeep and stuff. So I wasn't really paying attention to all of that. As long as I was fine, I could buy the things I wanted and I could do the things I wanted to do. I wasn't really thinking about myself and like paying myself and stuff, but it's important to pay yourself. It is very important, because let's say, for example, you employed someone to come and cook you lunch. You'd pay them. That's how it is. Just see it as you've been employed to make this cake for this person. You deserve to be paid, because you're using your expertise, you're using your energy, and everybody that works, that deserves to get paid. Besides, the pay can be like, you know, like an encouragement for you to do a better job. Kind of. So it's important to pay yourself. So when you're paying yourself, there are 3 things you should consider. The first is the mixing time. Yes, if it's going to take you 10 minutes to mix, consider that and add it to the amount of time you're going to charge the customer. Number 2 is the baking time. Personally, for me, I don't include the baking time in the amount of time I spent making a cake, because for me, I just feel like I'm not sitting in the oven with the cake, and I already charged for using the oven, so why? So number 3, and the most important, is the frosting time. For a cake like this, if I wasn't filming, in 30 minutes I'll be done because I'm really fast. So when I start my cake business, if I was going to make a cake like this, maybe I'm going to spend like 3-4 hours because I was really slow, because I was just learning. So the amount you charge for how long you're taking to shoot, it should reflect in your price. Basically, you don't want to charge too much if you're just starting, because you don't have that much expertise, if you want to be honest with yourself. And you don't want to be selling cakes for $10 when the bakers around you are selling for $2. I don't know if you understand me. So you have to be very realistic when charging for your time. So I can't exactly tell you how much to charge for your time, but be realistic and compare your prices to the prices obtainable around. You don't have to be extra cheap because you just started, but just make sure you pay yourself and you're being realistic. Would you want to pay so amount for this cake if you were the customer? That's a question I like to ask myself sometimes. And sometimes I just remind myself that if I were the customer, I wouldn't order this cake because I wouldn't be able to afford it. So you have to be honest with yourself and be able to really tell yourself the truth when it comes to the cost of labor and how much you want to get paid. Another thing that can help you in the cost of labor is you can decide to use how much minimum wage is in your country if you're just starting. I'm using minimum wage because if you're just starting, minimum wage, or maybe a little less because you're already charging for a lot of other stuff. A little less if maybe, for example, your selling price at the end of the day is going to be more than the usual price that obtains in your area. So you want to be very, very, very realistic about that. So let me do an overcap or a summary of what I've said. So the cost of ingredients, which includes ingredient for baking, ingredients for frosting. Then the cost of overhead, which includes electricity, water, rent, equipment, and the rest of it. And then the cost of labor, which includes the baking time, the frosting time, and the mixing time. And one of the most important things to remember when you are doing this, when you're trying to cost your cake, is that you don't want to be too expensive and you don't want to be too cheap. So you have to be able to strike the balance for where you live. Let me give you an example. If you were in America, $20 would not be too much to pay for $100 would not be too much to pay for an 8-inch cake. But if you were in Nigeria, $100 might be too much, depending on how skilled you are. So you have to put those things into, effect when you're costing. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know, because I really love you guys' feedback. And I'll be making a costing template very soon for you guys. And if you're watching this video late, it's probably in the description box. If it is not there, then I haven't made it yet. So you guys should be patient with me. Thank you guys for always watching my videos. And if you have questions, just leave them for me and I will get to them. Thank you and I love you. Bye.